You're listening to an encore presentation of the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. Welcome to the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. Get ready to hop into the Wayback Machine as we journey through the wild, bold, and unforgettable films of the 1970s. Each episode, we'll break down a classic or not-so-classic movie with a fun, fresh approach. We'll explore the who's who of each film, dive into the premise and the plot, and see how it performed then and now, and wrap things up with, did it groove through the decades or lose its beat? Today we are covering Don't Look Now, a 1973 film by director Nicolas Roeg, starring Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, based on the short story by Daphne du Maurier. Welcoming back is Matt Sargent. Matt, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
We missed you at the Midnights last time. We had quite a bit of fun.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed it, and you have to apologize. I have to apologize for my voice today. I have a bit of a cold, so I have an even deeper voice today, which is hardly possible.
I am sorry to hear that. However, we will enjoy your deeper voice today.
Hey, Laura!
What on earth was that, John? It was Christine.
Christine is dead, Laura.
You're sad. You're so sad, and there's no need to be. I've seen her. My sister's psychic.
You can't contact people, can you? She's trying to get in touch with us. Just trying to warn us.
Don't Look Now is a 1973 film starring Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie as John and Laura Baxter. They are supported by Hilary Mason and Kalia Matana as the two sisters. The film was directed by Nicolas Roeg, music composed by Pino Donaggio, and was edited by Graham Clifford. You can find this film streaming with ads free on Pluto TV, or if you'd rather rent it, you can rent it from services like Apple, Amazon, and others. Spoiler warning, if you've ever seen this film, you know it's difficult to discuss it or the elements of this film without giving too much away. In this episode, there will be spoilers. Roger Ebert said of this film that Don't Look Now remains one of the great horror masterpieces, working not with fright, which is easy, but rather with grief and fear. Matt, overall, what were your initial impressions of this film?
I had never even heard of this film, so it was very new to me when I watched it, and I did watch it in kind of broken up into sections, which wasn't optimal, but then I watched it all the way through. Can you imagine going to the movie theater and just basically going, oh, I got to sit through the whole thing, and I don't have no respite. It would have been a lot different experience. I bring away a kind of a unique view since I kind of saw it twice without resolution, once without resolution, and then the second time with the resolution at the end, which really was impactful because I had so many questions for both watchings. You figure that on the first watch, you're like, oh, okay, I don't really understand what's going on because I kind of started and stopped it. So then I watched it the second time, I'm just as confused until the end. I'm not sure how much other people's experience is anything more than, it's a pretty crazy movie. You should definitely see it because it'll probably be a different experience for you. So that's what I think we're going to come away with.
The gamut of reactions for this film that I have seen runs the whole spectrum. Sure. Some people say, this is the scariest film I've ever seen, and I'm not in that camp.
Yeah, me either.
I've read people say, I was bored to tears all the way through up until the end. I might be a little bit more in that camp on my first viewing, but after others were saying that you need to watch it a second time is when I thought the film hit a lot better than it did the first time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we get upset when filmmakers sort of dumb everything down for us, right? And sort of spoon feed us things. A lot of movies
This
do
is not that
nowadays.
film.
This is not that film. This film is a film where you go in and you're like, he's expecting a high level of paying attention and understanding what you're seeing. And honestly, I'm probably in the camp of I've been used to being spoon-fed so much that the first time I watched it, I was kind of like, I don't know what's going on here. I need some notes. I need a cliff notes of this thing. And I think movie viewers of the time were probably much more, this is a big event. We're going to the cinema and we're going to go see this movie. It's not just churn and burn, shoot 'em up movies. These are cinematic masterpieces being put together. And so it required a next level of attention. So in our recommendations, when we talk to people, if they're listening to this, I would say one of the things that you can really do yourself a favor on this movie is to really sit down and be prepared to pay attention on the first time. I think you'll get a lot more out of it.
Matt, I want to play for you a clip of director Nicolas Roeg and what he was saying about time.
We tend to believe in the familiar. We tend to say that's the definite. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's where we run into serious trouble. Time definitely has a linear sense to it, but I don't believe it. I believe it's lateral.
This film made me unsettled the first time I watched it, and I didn't really understand why. And that's because I did not realize that Nicolas Roeg was playing with time. And the movie is told more or less linearly, but there are elements of the film that are out of place. And that created for me a sense of not really sure where I was the first time I watched the film. On the second viewing, knowing that, a lot of things started to make sense to me. And it reminded me of The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis, where the first time you watch the film, you really don't know what's going on. And then the last 5 minutes of the film changes your entire perception of the movie. And then you can go back and watch it again, and you enjoy it from a different aspect because now you're starting to see how all the elements begin to weave together. And I believe that Don't Look Now also shares that same characteristic.
I have to agree with you 100%. And even more strangely for me is I didn't watch the whole thing through the first time. I watched it in sections, and I didn't get all the way through. And then I said, I'm going to sit down and watch the whole thing because I am so confused. And it's so funny because if I had just watched to the end, I would have figured out what's going on in the film. And that's why things don't seem to make sense and really throw you for a loop doing it. I was really kind of like, God, I don't know what's going on in this. I think it was effective because I didn't really understand that's what was happening. I mean, you always 100%. See some flashbacks in movies because it gives you backstory without having to do a bunch of exposition, right? So your main character is able to explain why they are the way they are without having to actually say the words of, and we see this in classical plays, the soliloquy, and when the actor sits there and has a long speech to the audience, those fulfilled basically what a flashback would be doing before they really understood the effectiveness of trying to stage a flashback on the stage. They talk about this is what the person's thinking. How do you show what somebody's thinking, So to me, it was like, okay, I didn't care about the flashbacks. That didn't sort of set me off. But then everything else was like super disjoint, but I didn't really realize they were disjoint because it wasn't like he was seeing them in radically different clothing or aged. Like it's not like a flash forward where you see yourself in the future where you're very aged, but the current person is very young.
It's all very near.
It's all very near. So it was confusing, which was super effective because it made you feel like uncomfortable and not understand exactly what's happening. I got to keep watching. And then it started, when things started to click in, it was very satisfying.
So one of the major themes of Don't Look Now is how a couple deals with grief. And at the very beginning of the film, a tragedy happens. Let's talk about that now.
Sure. I would also want to tell our listeners, this is a powerful scene. And if you have children, it can be tough to watch.
The film starts with the death of John and Laura Baxter's daughter, Christine, who is drowned in a pond that's on their property.
No one wants to see their child hurt. Though the movie, or since you're watching the movie, it's sort of a foregone conclusion that something's going to happen to precipitate the rest of the movie. In the scene when Donald Sutherland's acting it, he clearly doesn't know that his child has died. And so you go through all of that emotional, heart-wrenching acting, which was, in my opinion, it was excellent. It was excellent acting. but he's a master, so to be expected. It sets up the rest of the movie.
All throughout. Some of the imagery established in this opening scene repeat several times in the film.
Sure. I think one of the ones we definitely want to talk about is water is huge in this movie. Obviously, in this scene, they're in the English countryside, but the salient thing that happens is drowning in water in a pond. It's raining. And when they get to Venice, virtually everything is water. They get around on water. Water is, they have to navigate around it because it separates
You can't
people.
get away from water.
Right.
It's
a very
everywhere.
very powerful part of how that all winds through. I have a little problem with, as the movie goes forward, when parents lose a child, I think the last thing in the world they do is take the remaining child and send them off to boarding school. It didn't ring true to me. I think the first thing you would do after you lose a child is cling that other child to you, and because you want to be the protector. So sending them off to boarding school seemed a little weird, and it might have been an artifact of the movie, because later on in the movie we know that for some reason we have to draw the Julie Christie character, Laura, away from Venice. And so that's a good method to do that. But to me, I was like, I don't think that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think any parent I've ever met, if they lost a child, would let the other child just go to boarding school, especially because he was still quite young.
So one of the things that I noticed in this particular scene was just the use of sound and more like the lack of sound in some cases. Because when you see John leaving the home, there's really nothing there. And it's not until he dives into the water and comes back up that he just releases this guttural cry as he's holding Christine. And I could talk about how much I love this musical score, but right there, as he is crying out, the score comes in with this strong cello cue that you just feel like it's coming so far inside of him as he's trying to revive his daughter.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it sets up the tone for the rest of the film. But I mean, we've just covered the opening scene, but I think it does talk a lot about the rest of the movie. It kind of gives you the feeling and the dread and the foreboding, even though things look like they're going well on the surface and things like that.
Well, one other aspect of the music that I wanted to point out was the piano piece that's playing at the very beginning. It's played as if it was played by a little child. It's a little choppy. It's very simple. And it's as if somebody was reading it for the first time as they were playing the music. Maybe this is Christine playing a song. As we go through the movie, that melody keeps coming back through the film, getting stronger and bigger and more complete all the way up to the very final moments of the film.
That's a good observation. It probably was lost on me a little bit, although I feel like it was just yet another thing that was sort of building that uncomfortable, progressing dread. We're doing movies of the 1970s here. And I think this is a great example of what was generally happening. One of the reasons we picked the 1970s is so much was happening in cinema at that time. So many changes, so much experimentation. And this movie is a good example of that, because the blurred genre. Is it a psychological thriller? Is it a horror? Is it supernatural? What is it? And there are other movies that came out, The Exorcist, and some other movies that came out later, sort of exploring some of those same things. They deal with something that movies didn't deal with a lot, which was grief and psychological issues that would go on. Laura's obviously in therapy, because we see in a scene later on where she's like, I feel like I'm cured.
John,
Laura.
Listen, I'm perfectly all right. In fact, I haven't felt as good as this in months and months. I feel really fine. I don't need pills. I'm not going crazy. I feel really great.
And then you've already covered a lot of the techniques in the sound, which was amazing. And there's a lot of ambiguity, which wasn't really a thing until the 70s came along. Sort of movies were, Act 1, Act 2, resolve in Act 3, and everybody's happy, and they leave the theater.
We'll take a quick intermission here. Just enough time to grab some popcorn or top off your drink. You're listening to the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. Stay tuned. The show continues right after this. And we're back. Hope you enjoyed that brief intermission. Now, let's roll the next reel and get back into the conversation.
Okay, so now the movie shifts from England to Venice, where John is working on a church restoration. And we're also introduced to two additional characters who will play throughout the rest of the film, Wendy and her blind sister, Heather. And Heather has the gift of second sight. And in a bathroom, she tells Laura that she has seen their daughter, Christine, sitting between her and John.
I hope you don't think us rude.
Rude? Why?
I mean, staring at you out there. We're frightful starers, the two of us. It comes from living in the country, you know. Country people always stare more. I'm frightfully sorry.
Oh, well, I didn't notice it even if you
You've
were,
been
so
very
don't worry.
kind.
Which eye is it?
It's here, the left one.
Well, let me help.
How can you help?
I can try.
Oh, no. You only put Jocelyn's eye out the last time you tried poking about.
Perhaps I can help, do you think?
Oh, that's awfully kind of you. My sister's blind, you see.
You're sad. You're so sad, and there's no need to be.
My sister's psychic.
She wants you to know. I've seen her, and she wants you to know that she's happy. I've seen your little girl sitting between you and your husband, and she was laughing. Yes. Oh, yes, she's with you. She's with you, my dear. And she's laughing. She's wearing a shiny little map. Christie. Oh, but she's laughing. She's laughing. She's happy as can be.
They claim to see a little girl. They claim to relate that everything's okay. A drowning of a young victim in a young family is fairly unusual. And then for them to move to Venice, remember those two ladies were from England as well, and they were in Venice. It could have been that they just knew. So there was some ambiguity where you're like, are these just a couple of grifters who are going to try to play a scam and get some money from, Laura and capitalize on her grief? So you're immediately suspicious.
You're suspicious.
Yes, you're suspicious immediately. It was like the whole scene, I'm going, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Oh, so the prediction was the daughter that you recently lost, that you're absolutely grieving for, is happy and fine. Talk about a receptive audience, right? You're going to go to someone and say, the daughter that you recently drowned in your pond blames you and hates you. No one's going to say that. So the setup for that thing is you're immediately supposed to be skeptical because it's such a patent, truism that you would tell is that, oh, your poor daughter that just passed away cares about you and is happy and, all those things you want to hear. And now if just for a few more dollars, I can do a palm reading for you and tell you, what's going to happen in the future,
Well, what I think it really shows here is that John and Laura are handling their grief differently. John is almost ignoring it, and he's just throwing himself completely into his work, while Laura is trying to process her grief through counseling or through spirituality, trying to address it with religion, and now she's moving more into the mediums and seances. But you notice that all the men in the movie tend to be very pragmatic, while the women of the movie tend to be based less on what you can physically see, touch, and more with what you can't see.
I would agree. I would agree with that. I think it's a good observation, and it also might be people hate to say it, but it might be something that's sort of true in a lot of cases, that men handle their grief in one way with action, and women who are more thoughtful, generally more verbal, really want to talk it out, so they tend to handle their grief in another way. And that, again, that's not a universal rule or anything.
Right.
In this particular story, that's how they were characterizing it, and it opens up the door for those two ladies.
So, Matt, what did you think of the way the film used Venice as a backdrop?
I thought it was effective, especially when you take in consideration the opening scenes with the drowning of the little child in the rain and in the pond. And I think Venice is like another actor in the movie because it throws up lots of problems of navigating, trying to get from one place to another, because there are a couple of chase scenes, and Venice really kind of throws a monkey wrench into chasing someone.
Come here. I think I found the way.
No, we've been over this bridge already.
Well, I never minded being lost in Venice.
We go down here. If we take the second left, we end up right in front of San Zachariah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, just like that. Nice dark little alley.
What I found interesting was normally when you see movies with Venice in it, you're always seeing all the big touristy spots. I really felt like that I was seeing the back alleys. John and Laura get lost as they're going to dinner. Even the city that you're in is fractured.
Yeah,
it felt fractured is what it felt like to me.
I think that's right on.
One more question. Did you notice the use of red throughout the film?
I mean, it was a touch point in terms of the little girl, when she drowned, was wearing a red raincoat. And then the person that you see around Venice was wearing a red raincoat. And then I think there's red on the slide of some of the pictures. So it definitely sort of was a thing that kept a callback.
One aspect that you had mentioned about the color red or the bright coloring of the red was when it was the muted colors of everything else so that it really pops. And all throughout Venice, there were signs with the same shade of red was being used. And it was very purposeful whenever it was put up there.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a lot of thinking about how that color is going to play.
I really feel that this had some influence on M. Night Shyamalan's
for sure.
movie.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Especially, in the Sixth Sense where red plays a big role.
So another element that is driving the story is that there have been a series of murders happening all along the canals. And throughout the film, John and Laura come across different scenes where a murder has recently happened.
Sta fermo! Che è successo?
Sta ferma! C'è stato un omicidio! Sta ferma!
What did he say, homicide?
What is it you fear? The killer on the loose, the murderer. My wife is not a well woman.
Scusi, signore. Thank you, Mr. Baxter.
Chi è lei?
Sabioni, sezione omicidi. Murder squad.
And that generally adds to the foreboding nature of what's going on, and you're now worried about your protagonist. You think Laura is being duped by possibly somebody that might either want to steal from them or do harm. But it's it's somewhat low key. You get to understand that some bad things are happening, which comes into play later. The general feeling is things are not 100% aligned. There's an undercurrent of stuff happening that really throws you off while you're watching the movie.
So when they get back to their hotel, we now come to the scene that perhaps this movie is most known for.
Yeah, I think a good point on that, just to not to interrupt you too much, but part of it is that, Laura's talked to these ladies. She believes them. Mm-hmm. She believes her child is happy and everything's okay. So she's sort of renewed, right? She feels good, and she's in my my estimation of the thing is that she's ready to reconnect with her husband, and they do it in a fairly graphic way. Now remember, this was the 1970s, so free love and all kinds of things like that, and you got to sell tickets into a movie, and the actors were willing, so we have some pretty graphic. It's tasteful, but it's pretty graphic.
Matt, did you know the only difference between an X and an R rating is about 10 or 13 frames, because that's ultimately what they had to trim out in order to not get an X rating for the film because of this scene. Warren Beatty, he had dated Julie Christie for a long time, attempted to have this scene completely removed. And even as recently as 2011, an executive of Paramount at the time, I believe his name was Peter Bart, had written a book in which he claimed that he was on the set and that the act was real. But Donald Sutherland had refuted that and saying, anyways, there was no way that he was ever on the set because it was closed. So Peter Bart wasn't even there at the time. But it just goes to highlight the mythology that has arisen around this particular scene.
Yeah, maybe movie magic, maybe pornography, but the thing for me is it's not disjarringly inappropriate for the movie, because
right.
if you the movie is really throws you all over the place, and this is yet one more thing that kind of throws you
right.
off, and so it's effective in that use. I think we also have to look back, and like I said, it's the 1970s, and it just come out of the 60s and the Summers of Love and all this other stuff, and they felt like American cinema viewers were ready to go that next step. And it was definitely a movie pointed at adults.
The part that made me laugh, though, there was one thing. There was one line that Laura had said to him, something about oh, there's something on your side or whatever. And he looks down and she's making a comment, I guess, about his love handles. And I found that somewhat funny because he was skinny as a rail in this film. Like I said, I think I saw more of him than I really cared to see, but he was very, very, very skinny at this time. Before we move forward, I do want to mention that Donald Sutherland passed last summer, but in the 70s, he starred in over 27 films, including MASH, Start the Revolution Without Me, Kelly's Heroes, The Act of the Heart, Alex in Wonderland, Little Murders, Johnny Got His Gun, Clute, Steelyard Blues, Lady Ice, Don't Look Now, Alien Thunder, Spies, The Day of the Locust, End of the Game, 1900, Fellini's Casanova, The Eagle Has Landed, The Kentucky Fried Movie, The Disappearance, Blood Relatives, Animal House, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The First Great Train Robbery, Murder by Decree, A Man, a Woman, and a Bank, and Bear Island. You could do an entire podcast solely on the films of Donald Sutherland.
To call out to another movie, unfortunately, it was a movie in the 1980s, so we can't review it, but it was called Eye of the Needle. I don't know who his co-star was in that film, but there is a lot of, he meets a widow lady or a possible widowed lady up in the Shetland Islands, and he's a German spy, and they have a relationship, and it's very thrilling. That's a great movie, even though it's not the 1970s. And The Eye of the Needle with Donald Sutherland is fantastic, so I would recommend that. Well, I am a big, always have been a big Donald Sutherland fan. He has a real unique look about him. I think he's a wonderful actor.
And definitely an actor that will be missed. Laura continues to meet with Wendy and Hillary, and against John's wishes, she goes to the sisters in an attempt to contact Christine from beyond the grave. However, Laura gets a warning that John's life is in danger.
Sunday afternoon. Just finished lunch. You know something strange? John just suddenly got up and rushed down to the pond. Almost as if he knew something was going to happen. Well, it's too late. How strange.
Yes, of course.
What?
Of course. He has the gift. Well, that's why the child was trying to talk to him. He has the gift. Even if he doesn't know it, even if he's resisting it.
You can't ever contact people, can you?
They all want a lot of mumbo-jumbo about ectoplasm and holding hands. Second sight is a gift from the good Lord who sees all things. And I consider it an impertinence to call his creatures back from rest for our entertainment.
Wouldn't be for my entertainment. God, you're not going to be sick, are you?
Screw them.
You're just not listening.
I am not going to be sick.
All right, John, now listen. Heather, the blind one, she is really psychic. She has second sight. I mean, you'd understand completely if you'd... Today, when I was there, she went into the most incredible trance. Really,
Concentrate.
Absolutely. Now, John.
Yes?
She said that your life is in danger while you're in Venice. She kept on and on and on saying it.
I am going to be sick.
I've never been to a seance, but my guess is they're meant to sort of weird you out and be weird. And this one fits the bill on those. I mean, it definitely looked like it was a full body experience for the ladies.
And I think, again, this film is showing you that, hey, the way that the seances are happening with these ladies are nothing like it. But what they learn is they learn that Christine has actually been there to warn that John is in danger and that he needs to get out of Venice as quickly as possible.
Right. And Laura gets this information, and then she basically starts off on, we need to leave.
John doesn't necessarily want to leave because he could take some time off, but it's not going to be until like the weekend before he can do anything. And that night they get a call from Johnny's boarding school saying that Johnny has been injured and they need to come home. And I think earlier when you said, why would you send someone to boarding school? I think this is the whole reason why they sent him to boarding school.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a device to get Laura away from John. Whenever we watch these movies back in the 1970s, we lived through it. So we understand that you didn't just have a cell phone in your pocket and you could just pick it up and call the person wherever they were, maybe even on a plane. So it was a long period of time before there was any hope of communicating with Laura in England. So during that time that Laura's incommunicado, something very big happens.
We'll pause here for just a moment. Think of it as a real change. Stick around, there's more Cinematic Flashback coming up right after this. And we're back. The lights are down, the film's rolling, and the final act begins. Let's jump back into the Cinematic Flashback Podcast.
John returns to the church where he starts to look at some of the mosaic they'll be replacing. And John at this point says like, well, you know what? I want to make sure that they all match. So John goes up on what I have to call the world's worst.
The world's sketchiest scaffolding.
The world's sketchiest scaffolding ever. It's this hanging platform on ropes that he has to have people pulley him over into position as he's looking at the differences in the original and the new tiles that he has. When a board falls through the glass on this rickety platform, he's hanging on by one of the ropes, a good 20 feet above the floor of the church. Meanwhile, everyone's trying to pull him back on and he's just spinning, and they finally get him on. John's thinking, okay, this must have been it.
Yeah, this was the danger I was warned of.
Something interesting about that scene. Did you notice you never cut away to a stuntman?
No, yeah.
So the stuntman said, no, I'm not doing that. You don't have the proper insurance set up, because that's not just a floor. That's the marble flooring of the church at the very bottom.
An unforgiving surface. And the way they shot it, the floor is in focus all the time. So you couldn't put a big mat down there.
So Donald Sutherland said, I'll do this. And they wired him up with a rigging that they use in stage productions to fly. It's called a Kirby wire. Yeah. And you probably know all of this from your days.
Well, I remember them, but I do know that they did that because he is actually holding a rope, but they use the Kirby wire just in case he actually loses grip, which is highly likely.
And so later, Stuntman, they were talking about this film, and he said, you were wearing a Kirby wire. He was surprised. He said, because they kept spinning you around. Kirby wires break when you do that. The actor was actually really in danger.
It's a great scene. It's definitely it's a very exciting scene in the movie. And one of the reasons why this movie is so great, because it builds up to a lot of stress. This happens. And really for a good long time, you're like, is he going to be able to hold on long enough for them to start swinging him over so they can grab him? Nobody can really get him. You're
on edge.
Yeah.
You're on edge. So right after this, there are like three things that happen. Number one, the bishop tells him, my dad, he died in a fall. It's like, oh, okay, great. Didn't need to know that, but thank you. The second thing is that while the bishop and John are walking beside the canal, they come across another homicide scene. And the third thing that happens is that John is on the Grand Canal and suddenly he sees Laura and Heather and Wendy on another boat heading in another direction.
He only gets a glimpse.
It's a glimpse. And John is like absolutely confused as if, wait a minute, is my wife back? Did she miss her flight?
Why is she with the two ladies?
So there's a lot of time spent now where John is trying to locate Heather and Wendy and possibly his wife. He goes back to the hotel that they were staying at to see if Laura had come back there. He eventually goes to the police. He gets sketches. He's trying to retrace his steps to find out where the sisters were living. And then John makes a call to the boarding school to check in on Johnny. And he is shocked when the headmaster hands the phone over to his wife, Laura.
Right. And I will also point out, as an audience member watching the film, you're absolutely convinced that was Laura on that boat and the two ladies. There's no doubt in our minds.
No doubt.
What he saw was the wife and the two ladies. So once he's talking to Laura at the boarding school, you're just discombobulated at this point going, what is this guy losing his mind? What's happening?
So now we have Laura who's on her way back. And John, trying to correct his mistake, goes back to the police station where he finds that Heather has been arrested and she's in holding. Heather is released to John, who takes her back to her apartment where they find Wendy is already there. Heather goes into some kind of trance and Wendy ushers John out very quickly.
They found your wife then?
Yes, with the killings and...
He's explained everything to me. Have we a drop of whiskey to offer Mr. Baxter? You will stay a minute, won't you?
Yes.
There's the miniatures we got for Jessie.
Well, Laura's
been
playing
wearing them
it,
all
then
day
I
long.
think that I had better be
Let
going.
Mr. Baxter be off, Wendy.
Wait!
Is there anything I can do?
No,
Can I help you?
Quite all right. Goodbye, Mr. Baxter. That'll be all right.
Ah! 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 Ah!
Matt, this is one of the points of the story where time didn't quite make a lot of sense to me because I felt that Laura got back to Venice very, very quickly. In fact, she is arriving at the hotel where Heather and Wendy are staying just moments after John has just left. And as John is leaving, he sees a little girl wearing a red rain jacket and he starts to follow after her. And Laura comes out and now she's following after John.
So, I mean, I think it leads us to a big culmination. And I don't know if we want to share that.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm a friend. I won't hurt you. Come on.
Darlings.
Matt, I couldn't spoil the end of The Sixth Sense, and I don't really want to spoil the end of Don't Look Now.
Yeah. So a great movie, in my opinion.
Did Don't Look Now groove through the ages, or did it lose its beat?
I would say it definitely grooved through the decades, and it's a great movie now. I think it was a great movie then. I think maybe it's possibly a little greater now based on the retrospective of how much it influenced movie making. I had never seen before. I hadn't even heard of it. So for me, it was a real experience and an eye-opening one, and I enjoyed it. I won't say it wasn't it wasn't difficult. It was challenging, I guess, but it was well worth it.
I think this film does groove through the decades, primarily for the same reason that you said. It had such influence on other directors and other films that we've enjoyed. I know we talked about M. Night Shyamalan, and although I never saw a direct influence referenced by him, I did see influences by Chris Nolan on his movie Memento. He has accredited Nicolas Roeg in this film for some of the influences that it had on his movie making. So again, I don't think this is going to be a film that's going to be one on my regular rotation. I think it's a little too heavy for that. Once we're done watching, this will be a film that I do recommend to people. But as we said during our conversation, we have to recommend it with you got to know that there is a scene in here that may not play well if you're trying to watch it with a family or something. We can recommend Breaking Away for everybody.
Exactly.
This one
not so much.
This is a smaller audience, maybe.
This is definitely like one of those movies like Algebra 2 Trig in middle school. You definitely need to take it, but you probably don't want to go to retake it. It's important for your film education. It possibly isn't one that you want to go back and see again. Although if someone wanted to see it, like someone said, oh yeah, will you watch it with me? I would watch it again for sure. But I'd be hard pressed to sit there and not go, ooh, got to pay attention to this.
The experience for somebody who hasn't seen The Sixth Sense before, and you're going with somebody who has seen The Sixth Sense before, you're keenly aware that they're looking at you to see what is your reaction to this the entire time. Did you get it? Huh? Did you see a little over there?
Very funny.
And you will do the same thing for others when you watch this film with someone who hasn't seen it. And Matt, thank you again for joining me on this journey. And I also want to thank our listeners for joining us. If you want to contact us, you can email us at podcast@cinematicflashback.com or leave a comment on our Facebook page, the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. Also, we are trying to build this show, and we would deeply appreciate a review on the platform you are listening to. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review so we can reach more listeners. So join us next time as we take the Wayback Machine to the 70s to explore another film from that decade. Well, Donald Pleasance, it's already funny. You and I have...
Donald Sutherland.
Take two.